Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. Never, really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. Who are you?
You come back in another couple of weeks after you lost another 40 or 50 pounds. You tell me what you believe then. Yes, you tell me what you believe then. You hear me? You tell me what you believe. You tell me. Eddie of Edward's Truth.
Oh. I had no idea how long that was going to go on for.
And Des, apparently.
Hey, Des.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Stephen King's Thinner.
Yeah.
Released October 25th, 1996.
What the fuck?
We're also happy International Pie Day. It's March 14th. Right? That was the reasoning behind choosing this, just because of that atomic pie at the end, whatever you want to call
cursed it. Pie.
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, yeah. What the fuck?
Right. Okay. So did you see this before?
I've seen this a long time ago. And I remember when this came out, it was a big deal. I mean, I want to say a big deal, but it was people were talking about that. You have to remember, this was right before Scream. And Scream was obviously a huge shift in the horror genre. Because 1996 and earlier horror was such a different landscape that I don't know, I need to look up more information about this movie as we go through this. But I distinctly remember seeing trailers and people talking about this because it was it was a thing. I guess just the fat suit that he wears or the makeup effects. But yeah, it just kind of it went away and nobody ever spoke about it again. So, and I completely forgot most of this movie. The only thing I remembered is that Stephen King has the cameo as the pharmacist. And that there was a pie in it that it was part of the gypsy curse. But how about you?
Okay. I had no prior knowledge going into this one. I think I had heard about it. I mean, there were so many Stephen King properties that had been made into films and TV movies and everything like that. But it was a name that was always kind of floated around, but it was never one of the predominant ones. I don't think it would crack any kind of top 10 Stephen King properties that mainstream audiences would be able to name at will. It's kind of a deep cut.
Yeah, and I feel bad because I was sure that we'd done something Stephen King at this point, and I was just today I was going through our repertoire of previous episodes, and I'm just there is Thinner gonna be the first Stephen King property that we cover.
Oh wow.
Which is just why Thinner? And we know why, because of International Pie Day.
Right.
But yeah, because I know when we did the old podcast, we talked about, we did Carrie, we did Pet Sematary, we did Shining, Doctor Sleep, Misery. I'm sure there was several more.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the Cherry Picker as we know it, we haven't done any Stephen King yet, so that's gonna change.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
that's gonna be good. But so this one, I mean, what did you make of it when you saw it though? Your experience
just today, first? Literally an hour before we started recording.
Right,
here.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, because I've been so busy that and probably good because my track record with watching movies late at night where I fall asleep and have to watch them again. So I'm glad that I just watched it right through, and it's fresh in my memory. Because I mean, this is not a great movie, but by the end of it, there is just something. There's a certain level of camp to it that I kind of really liked. It was just this movie's so ridiculous that it's like I'm probably never gonna watch this again for a while, but that's probably good because when the next time I do, I'll probably be like, oh yeah, there's a reason why this isn't a very good movie. But then there's just like crazy shit that happens throughout, like that nightmare sequence. Just like what the fuck was that? Like the lizard,
Oh boy.
man, and all that. So there are nuggets in this movie that that are very special, but on the whole,
Right.
I think that this is kind of a very average, like blah movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we go any further, shall I premise?
Grace us with a premise, please.
It won't be that graceful. It's going to be pretty quick, painless. Here we go. An obese attorney named Bill Halleck is cursed by a vengeful gypsy to rapidly and uncontrollably grow thinner. I mean, that's it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
basically.
there's more to it, but it's pretty basic, and we'll get into everything else. And I do want to let people know, like, this is as of this recording, it's streaming on HBO Max. So if you have access, do yourself a favor, stream the movie. You can jump right in with us. You'll understand a lot of the kind of bewildered shaking of heads and shrugging and smiling. I mean, there are smiles to be had in this movie as well. But it's interesting because you mentioned it being released in 1996, and I had to recheck again the year when I had to pause at one point.
Yeah.
So I was curious, like, what year was this? Because literally it feels like it was made the day after Pet Sematary, which I believe was what, like 88, 89? Something
89,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, got a really similar look. And it's also got a really, I don't know, it's got a simplicity to it. Like on screen, there's not a lot of complexity.
It's got it kind of feels like a made for TV movie.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And that's because like there's a very specific feel and aesthetic to horror movies that did come before Scream in the 90s. Like that stretch from like probably 89 to 96 before Scream came along. Like you can kind of see it in the first Scream, but like after that, like I feel just like movies that what I think it is that just because of the state of the horror genre in the early 90s, studios weren't putting a lot of money into things. Like I think there were certain things like Candyman has a very distinct feel to it because I think that was that was like a higher budget picture that you know the studios actually put effort into. So I think that when Scream came along, that's when studios were just kind of like, okay, we're gonna make like horror movies like like glossier, and they're gonna look more expensive because this like it has a look to it. Like there's like a lot of movies that it reminded me of, or like maybe like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. There's one called The Guardian. I think that's what it was called. Just like a lot of things that were coming out. What's the one with Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood? The Good Son.
The Good Son.
Yeah, just like like everything that was coming out in that stretch of like 6 years all has that very same look to it, like very very like mini series or made for TV. And that was kind of like this was a time where like Stephen King was thriving because like made for TV and like mini series was kind of his forte. Like you know he had his you know big pictures released theatrically, but there was like a huge call for like you know like wasn't Pet Sematary 2 a made for TV movie, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, was it? I thought it was a feature, but
Maybe.
I don't know. We'll do the research when we do that pod.
But even I mean like just in general, like I think that the 90s just for all genres as well, it's just there was a switch somewhere. I think 97 is probably the year that things just started to like movies started to become epic. Like again at that point, I'm like, is what like that's when like Titanic came out. So I think there's just like, you know, like big names like James Cameron were obviously pushing the industry forward. But I was just like, I've been marathoning all of the James Bond movies. And I just started the Brosnan era. And like even watching GoldenEye, which was his first movie, to Tomorrow Never Dies, which came out 2 years later in '97. It's like drastically different looking, like cinematography. Like the film looks like it aged up, or just like the like technology advanced like 10 years in the span of like the 2 years in between it.
Yeah, I can definitely identify what you're talking about in terms of just like production value in films up until this point. And that's why this movie feels like it was definitely part of that pre-Scream era, because I remember it feels like any movies made like 1990 to 1996 before Scream, or 1995, let's just say, like if you're anywhere in anyone's kind of domicile, in any person's house, you're usually going to get a lot of pastels and a lot of like, you know, natural ambient daylight kind of flooding through windows, and you're going to get a lot of light colored wood. You know what I mean? Like a lot of like beige and lighter shades of wood. There wasn't a lot of like darkness to be had in the homes. There's a lot of floral prints and a lot of, I mean, it looked like it was spring all the time.
I mean, well, we were just talking about
the same thing is true in this movie.
The Simpsons in Child's Play 2,
right?
when Andy walks into that house.
I mean, theirs is exceptional because it's literally like pastel blue, pastel pink, and no other colors.
Yeah.
But, but I mean, it was kind of shocking moving through it, because also the amount of people who had their hands in this as well, like Tom Holland is directing, and
of the original Child's Play.
Of the original Child's Play, of the original Fright Night, and of the screenplay for Psycho 2. For
anyone like possibly me, who is just like Tom Holland, like Spider-Man. No.
He was born in '96.
Oh, was he actually?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Tom Holland is almost 30. I guess like 27.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Still
I
like
can't do math.
playing a high school, or is he out of high school now? I have not been keeping up with the MCU.
He's. I mean, I won't go into spoilers, but he's kind of out of high school for reasons now.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna.
Well, yeah. I feel like
in the last movie,
everyone's seen the movie, but yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, but just in case they haven't, you know, I don't know.
Is this the first time we've talked about the MCU?
No, I have a feeling they've come up at some point. Okay. After a year of doing the Cherry Picker, it must have come out at some point. But so Tom Holland, though, the horror Tom Holland.
Horror Tom Holland,
so, yeah. And then Joe Mantegna playing Richie. Because I saw his name in the credits, so I was like, what, really? Yeah. And for those of you who don't know who Joe Mantegna is by name, he probably most famous thing he's done is he's the voice of Fat Tony on The Simpsons. Again, another Simpsons reference.
There's a lot of Simpsons happening this month.
There are!
But I feel
Spring is the season of The Simpsons.
Yeah. I mean, because I've seen him in a lot of things before, but I feel like in this in particular, like I think that this was probably his most Fat Tony role. Like he's literally playing a mafioso, and he has a line. Fuck, what is it? He's just like, I got it here somewhere. I had to write it down. He's like, he was a mook, but he was my mook. And I love the word mook. The only thing I remember hearing it from is that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when that demon breaks into her house and he's just like, you cost me, Slayer, and breaks something, and then Sarah Michelle Gellar, in just like her cutesy little voice, is like, I cost you? That was a designer lamp, you mook.
I feel like network television used that word a lot, because I remember using it when I worked in a video store. To my manager, I called a customer who had made him feel angry. I was like, don't bother with that guy, he's a mook. And I think I even said it with that cadence, like, hey,
He's
I'm
a
Fat
mook.
Tony. But he just said, like, what is a mook? And I was like, I have no idea. I think it's always used dismissively. I think it means they're a simp. Yeah, they're a simp. They're an idiot. They're a moron. They're a mook. And he said, it sounds racially charged. I'm like, well, if that's the case, I won't use it anymore.
I think it just sounds racially charged because of the accent that's being placed behind it. I feel like if that should have been what would have made Halloween Ends better is if like all those like Brooklynese players were just like you throwing out the term mook. He's just like,
yeah, right.
It's like, yay, you're not gonna buy us some beer, you mook. You're gonna sip your milk.
Forget about it. Yeah. But if everybody, even Lori should have had one. Just kind of like, hey, you want to pick up someone your own size? I'm Laurie Strode right now. But anyway,
wasn't Haddonfield was originally? Isn't it like Haddonfield, New Jersey? I believe that was like Deborah Hill's hometown.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Okay, then maybe that's why they're all... Maybe that's a nod. Maybe it's a deliberate nod to Deborah Hill.
Deborah Hill.
He said skeptically. But
how do we pay homage to Deborah Hill in the new Halloween? It's just like, I know.
A handful of characters talk like this.
It's like Haddonfield is now closer to Brooklyn. It's in New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah.
No, should we maybe more mindfully like handle our female characters and allow them to grow and develop and forge friendships with each other? Nah, we'll just have somebody sound like that from Jersey. But anyway, okay, enough of that.
Anyway, Fat Tony is like
Joe
literally
Mantegna's
the only character of that quality that shows up in this movie, Thinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's played quite a few too. Like unfortunately, poor Joe Mantegna. I mean, he made money, so maybe not poor Joe Mantegna. But I noticed like Walter Bobbie. He's like this famous Broadway director. Had a small role. He was literally, I think it said and Joe Mantegna, and then there were two more names after his that were just kind of thrown in very small. And the last one was Walter Bobbie, and I was just like, oh, Walter Bobbie's in this. And then he was on screen for all of, I think he had a screen time of 2.5 minutes. Yeah. I think he was in the law office with Bill. And,
well, did you? There's a lot of cameos.
He was Man in Tie
in this. Like, if you want to call them cameos. Because the one that I noticed, because I was going through the IMDb, is that Peter Maloney, who we know as... he was in The Thing. I forget which character he played. He played Bennings. Oh. He was the first one that was assimilated when he had his, like, the big claw, and they all, like, circled around him outside in the snow and lit him on fire. He was the guy.
Oh, and he's that guy.
He's like, oh yeah, I got information for you, but but he like blackmailed him so he wouldn't tell his wife and the doctor where he was.
Oh, that is so funny. Yeah. Because I recognize him now. It was one of those cases. I did that the whole movie. Yeah. I kept seeing these actors and going like the ones I couldn't identify. Yeah. I'd be like, I know I've seen you in something. I recognize Josh Lucas.
Which one was Josh Lucas?
He's not even credited, but he was when Bill goes to what was it called? I wrote it down somewhere. He went to the Glassman Clinic, and he was asking like, can you find out like what's wrong with me and everything like that? And they were trying to find. They had the really really cheery doctors with their arms crossed, going like, well, we'll run tests and don't you worry, we'll find out. You know that.
I always like did a double take because I was just like, is that Sherry O'Terry? It should have been. It wasn't.
They both looked familiar. Both of those doctors looked like people who I've seen in other things, and I'm sure they are. But Josh Lucas is the guy who interrupts. He's the male nurse who hands him, I think it's a banana split, and says, and I gave you extra whipped cream or something like that. Yeah. And he just kind of sits there and eats, and then he goes up and he gets this really strange close-up, like an Adrian King close-up, and then he just exits the scene and he never comes back. He's never heard from him again. I almost didn't recognize him because he looked a little heavier and something was going on with his hairline. It was further back than when he got famous. So Josh Lucas got beat with a pretty stick for Hollywood.
Yeah. Also, there was
that.
The court stenographer. Is that what you call them? The
typists.
Yeah, he looked familiar. I don't know if it was him because I was looking through the credits. He looked like the guy from the episode of Buffy who who turned into the worms. Remember that guy who was like he was like one of the assassins?
Yeah. Ew.
From season 2, What's My Line? The two-parter.
Right. Ooh, you knew the name. You knew the title.
We did. Yeah, we did our Buffy.
Yes, we did
on the After Dark.
I wouldn't have remembered the title though. But and then there was one other. I kept looking at his daughter, Linda.
Oh,
and I even looked her up.
Yeah, she was on One Tree Hill. She plays.
Yeah, which I never watched.
Haley. She's like one of the 5 like core like one of the teens.
Oh.
She's the. It's
her.
like Bethany Joy, I think.
Okay. And I saw she was on Dexter too, but I don't think I watched.
She was in the
far
last
enough.
season, not the last
okay.
like the first run of Dexter. Like I think it was like season 8. She had a recurring role in that. But she was Bethany Joy Lenz. She plays the daughter. And
she got a lot of credits too. I'm sure I saw her in something.
Also, well, the main character. Like have you seen other stuff that he's been in?
Not that I could summon at will. Like I again looking at him and I'm just like I've probably seen you on something in the 90s, something X-Files or something like that.
Well, he looks very familiar. But like he's probably one of those character actors. But because his top credits or his like top credit is RoboCop 3.
Right.
Robert John Burke. I'm just like, no, he looks very familiar, and I put it together in my head. He's like, for anyone who ever watched Gossip Girl, again, like the original run, because like all these shows have like new reboots. He was Chuck Bass's father, Bart Bass. I've watched every single episode of that show. I don't remember anything that happened on that show, but I distinctly remember seeing it. Okay. I remember her name's like Serena Vanderwoodson, and Penn Badgley is on it. But yeah, and this guy too.
Right, Penn Badgley knew about that.
Yeah, Penn Badgley.
But so yeah, it felt you were right. It did feel like a TV movie. I felt like I was watching an episode of back in the day, like Tales from the Crypt or Amazing Stories or one of those things. Like it had that level of production value. Not bad, actually. And it had that level of production value as far as just the sets and the way it was shot. But the thing that I actually think I can give a lot of credit to are Greg Canham's special makeup is how they credit it in the opening sequence. Because it was quite clearly a fat suit when our leading man walked out when Bill walks out, but I thought it was well done. I kept looking for flaws, like the way you kind of do just like in the back of your head when you're watching a movie. I was paying attention, but I kept looking for flaws in the makeup. And the only thing I could come up with was, well, he's clearly wearing it. Like he's got that kind of pancake complexion, but then the camera would go to whatever actor was working across from him, whether it was Joe Mantegna or his wife. And they had the same kind of pancakey complexion, which is just what happens when you shoot in light that is too harsh or not harsh enough.
I noticed that
and you've got actors wearing makeup.
Yeah. As he gets thinner throughout the movie, the one thing that was consistent was that he did have that complexion, but he was always sweating still. It's just
he was shiny up here.
Yeah, because he was always eating. That's the thing. He was probably eating more and more as the movie went on. But it's just it was just coming out of his pores everywhere. They're just oh, this is so gross. even as he's getting gaunt, it was just there's still so much sweat. I wonder what the sweat budget was.
Oh god, it was just keeping him hydrated. I know.
They just go by with a little spritz and just every scene, just let's moisten you a little.
I think they'd worry about that, making things starting to because if you make the apparatus if you make it heavier. Because I remember I wore prosthetics when I did the Grinch at Universal Studios for their Grinchmas 2 years in a row. And I remember how I'm a huge sweater, and I remember the stuff would be saturated so much that I'd go backstage after I'd do a half-hour set, and I'd take paper towels and hover over the sink and just press the apparatus wherever they had put the Grinch face on me, and just press it like a sponge. It's like having a sponge against your face. You just press it and just watch my sweat just go down the drain. It's not sorry if I'm grossing people out, but so I don't think they would have spritzed him. I know when Goldie Hawn was in her fat suit in Death Becomes Her, they put a hose up her back. And she would, because she would like, she the way I remember seeing an interview with her where she would describe it, she'd be like, it happens like in a split second. You think you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, get me out of this suit. I'm going to die. And so I guess you can get a little claustrophobic too, but they would lean her against a wall and stick a hose up her back to get her some air circulating inside the suit. I wonder if they did something similar. I tried to find more trivia about this movie just in the way of like promotional materials and interviews, like, you know, sometimes I do with movies I'm not that familiar with. Couldn't find much. That, like, here and there was like a tidbit on Wikipedia, a little something in a YouTube video of somebody basically just breaking down the plot, and then here's a little detail and there's a little detail comparing like the book version to the movie, because that was another thing. It didn't feel like a full novel, but it is. It felt like a short story to me that they just kept trying to build upon, because it's such a simple concept. So
I mean, we can get into that, because there's definitely a lot left to be desired. But I'm just looking here on the trivia. It said that it was a 4 to 6 hour chair sit for the makeup for him.
Oh God, yeah, that makes sense.
And at his thinnest,
especially for makeup, that looks good.
Well, he weighed 120 pounds. Or I guess the character was supposed to be 120, which it just says was challenging for the FX crew, as the actor was 160 pounds at the time of the production. And he had to lose, I think it was like 20 pounds to play the role. So, and that was which is funny. It's just like, why not like you know, leave him as with 20 pounds heavier, as that's how he starts out. Right?
Well, I guess to get him gaunt, like he has to be like a kind of like, you know, margin of, you know, a weight, like, you know, like there's got to be like brackets of weight that's kind of like acceptable, that's not going to read too thin or too fat, depending on like what makeup they have on you on the day. But I thought, well, I was just gonna say,
when you looked up the video, there was like the book to movie comparison. Did it talk about the original ending?
Yes. Apparently, the only thing that I got that was really, really different is in the original ending, his wife eating the pie is not premeditated by him. It's accidental. So a lot of people who were fans of the book, who went to go see the movie, were upset with that particular thing. And he doesn't invite what's his name in, because that was another thing, a big difference allegedly between, because I haven't read the book. I would though, but a big difference between the book and this presentation allegedly is that the affair was never fully materialized to the point where it made him so antagonistic toward his wife. It was kind of something that occurred to him vaguely, that was alluded to somewhere in the book, and it never paid off. Like, it was just, I think it might have been rooted in his insecurities or something about like what his weight is doing to his marriage.
Okay, well, one second on that, because I just want to read what it says, because just in terms of the ending. Director Tom Holland wasn't happy with the ending. The producers changed the original one, which was faithful to the novel, because every test audience hated it. So it sounds like that was the original ending, where, you know, that was the book, and that's the one that Tom Holland liked, but that was the one that test audiences hated. So then they went with what we see in the movie, which is of him premeditatedly feeding his wife the cursed pie. But okay, of everything you're saying, because I never got how it's presented. First of all, every character in this movie is an a-hole. There's not one,
except the daughter.
The daughter's like the one sympathetic character, but she's like barely a character in it. Like, she just shows up to just be like, all right, I'm going to school, you know, just like the daughter who
and
gets
does
good
doing
grades.
Godfather impressions with her dad.
But everyone kind of sucks. Everyone kind of sucks to varying degrees. But watching it, because I forgot, I knew that he turned on his wife from the first time I saw it. I didn't remember exactly what the context was. But here, it didn't really seem like the affair or the the idea of the affair, because I don't think, like, I think that the affair is really open to interpretation. If anything, I would say that there
Me
probably
too.
wasn't an affair. It was all in his head. But it seemed
That's
like
what I thought.
But it seemed like why he was angry with her and why he was like, wanted to get revenge on her or blame her is because he felt that she was deserving of being cursed as well, because it was all her fault that this happened. Because this is the character. This is the character how I see it. It's just like he cannot take responsibility for anything. He has this sense of entitlement, and because as the accident happened, that his wife was giving him a blowjob while he ran into and killed the gypsy woman, is that was it would never have happened if it was not for her doing that. So, we see throughout the movie, because, he kind of makes these passive aggressive digs about it to her, and she's just kind of like, okay, like that's, I don't know why you're saying that. You weren't complaining about it then.
Exactly.
But by the end of it, like, it just seems just like it was framed really weirdly, because as he was like leaving, like, I guess the wife and the doctor were expecting him to go back to the clinic, but he just like hightailed it out of town to find the gypsies. And he was doing this voiceover narration, and I couldn't tell if he like wrote a letter to her, or he was just like saying it. It was weird, but he was just saying something like, they have no idea that you're responsible too. So I mean, based on the fact that he came back home later and she welcomed him with open arms, I don't think that he did write her a letter. Like, that was a very confusing part of the movie. So it seemed more like it was his inner monologue, but like in that moment, I'm just like, so is he blaming her for, like, is he trying to, like, because what is his plan anyway, to go to the gypsies and like, because first he's just like, I'm sorry, or I don't even think that was his first thing. He was just like, this is not right that you're doing this to me. And then he's like, fuck you all. And then that's when he got on his knees. He's like, I'm so sorry. It was like the stages of like grief or right. whatever.
Well, I mean, because going back to the Romani people and all of that, like, it kind of set the movie on a different track. Like, I feel like I spent a lot of this movie writing the concept of just kind of like, okay, we've got a big guy, but obviously he's in a fat suit from the onset, and I'm like, okay, it's called Thinner, so he's going to get thinner. Let's find out why. But it's going to be bad, because it's Stephen King wrote it. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be like, and I'm healthier than I've ever been. The end. But he because even that's the thing. There's a lot of stuff that's ambiguous that I feel is open to interpretation, because I couldn't tell whether he was in a happy marriage or not. Like, I couldn't tell whether the wife was genuinely concerned about his health and just wanted him to share her concern, because that's a very sympathetic quality. But then there were also moments where I felt like she was being depicted as quote unquote kind of harpy, who and questioning like, well, are we supposed to wonder if she even loves him? Like, is she letting this get in the way of, like, her love for him and placing a condition on her love? And it's like, if he gets thinner, then she'll be able to love him. Like, are we going to have a big disclosure later about how embarrassed she is to be seen with him or something, or how she doesn't find him attractive anymore? And none of that ever came up. Maybe in the book, like in his insecurities, like maybe Stephen King, because Stephen King is a real good writer, like especially of character and of inner monologue and inner dialogue, like speculative kind of
I wonder what
dialogue.
Stephen King thinks of the movie, because he's in it,
I bet he's happy that he got the check. But and that yet another property is out there for people to throw their money at and consume and discuss, like we are doing.
Because like in terms of like what you're saying about the wife, what was her name? Heidi, I think.
Heidi. Yeah.
Because she's clearly like, wants him to lose weight, but the thing is, like, cause she like full on gives him a blowjob, like in the car when he's at his most girthiest, we'll say. But even if there is an affair, it's not really manifesting itself, at least in from what he sees, until after he starts to lose weight. So it's never, if there is an affair, it has nothing to do with his physical appearance, because he's like, everyone's like, oh, you've never looked better. That if there was something, it might have just been more of like an emotional affair of just like, here's someone who's they're both concerned about him,
Sure.
and they're spending more time together. But I mean, it seemed like from the end, like the very last shot of, when Dr. Mikey comes knocking on the door like really early, because he sort of like turns around and his expression drops because he didn't expect to see him. So my takeaway from that is that the doctor wanted to have an affair with her, and it was almost like good that this guy was like potentially out of the picture now, because then he could like swoop in and do his thing. But it seemed like she wasn't, like if he was doing it, it was more just like sneaky, like he would have like eventually if Billy never came back, then he'd probably just show up one night, or as he kept inviting himself over and surprise her with like champagne and whatnot, and just like try to make the move on her there. So I fully didn't get anything from an affair. And even the last, speaking of your favorite Linda, played by Bethany Joy Lenz, because that last scene, I could not, and I did not care enough to go back and like listen to what she said, because he was surprised that she was there, because he told her to go to a friend's house because that's where he was like gonna premeditatedly murder the wife, like give her the cursed pie. And unbeknownst to him, she came home that night anyway, but he was already in bed. But I couldn't tell what she was talking about. Like was she making up with the mother? Because I don't remember them ever fighting. But she said something. Oh yeah, we sat last night and we like ate the pie. We like ate pie and just like we patched things up. Yeah, worked it. I'm like, worked what out? Like, you haven't even been around. I don't know what the issue is.
Well, see, okay, it's interesting because all of this is completely open to interpretation. I'm glad that you got enough from Dr. Mike to kind of like form a theory about what's going on. Because for me, I thought, because the way it like you talk about the manifestation, it literally does seem to manifest in a gauzy way, like he's kind of having this fucked up dream, like living in morbid morbid fantasy about what his wife could be doing, like because he perceives Dr. Mike as a threat. When they first kind of like ghostly appear on the screen, that's what I thought was happening. He was just almost like hallucinating.
Or is that part of the gypsy powers that he was able to...
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, also, is it because it's a curse? Like, does that mean that it's not the truth? Is it part of it, like planting the seed that he'll not only like destroy himself, but his family, the people who mean the most to him, since he killed the daughter of Tatsu?
Yeah.
But he then when he comes home and the wife seems genuinely happy to see him, and she's just kind of like, and just so you know, she seems to know that he's been suspicious of things like that, and she assures him that nothing has ever happened. And I think she might even name Dr. Mike. I don't remember if she does, but I think she does. And it's just is like, nothing ever happened, nothing like that and everything. And I'm like, okay, I buy it. There's no wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and I haven't seen anything to condemn you. Yeah. But when Dr. Mike had the reaction he did when the door was open, for the first time in the movie, I wondered, wait, so were they having an affair and she's just a really good liar? Like, it didn't solidify anything for me. It just opened up the gates, the floodgates of possibilities. But the thing with with his daughter, with Linda, what I perceived was just, she seemed so genuinely upset that her father was like that his health is so weird. Like here, I mean, it seemed to genuinely bother her that he was losing weight at a rapid rate. Yeah. I couldn't tell if she was just upset because it was really fast and it was creepy, or if she was upset because he's losing weight but he's still eating, so he hasn't solved the problem. Or does she think he has cancer like her mother does about him? Or like, it was just, all I thought was, there's discord in the family. Yeah. When he's gone, there's probably not a lot of alliance between the mother and the daughter, so maybe they've been having a hard time and fighting. Maybe it's just that time in the family's life.
Yeah, because we didn't.
Finally,
we
bury
didn't
the
see
hatchet.
any fight between the mother daughter, but like there was that one scene where she does the like the Anna Faris like runaway like the argument and just like
yeah.
I think I wrote a note of that. And she runs away from dinner, which just felt because it's one of those things. It just feels very of that time too, of just like those 90s made for TV movies where there's just like the forgotten child or whatever, and it's just like, well, how's this affecting you? And it's just like not very well, but just so we check on her and we know that she's there too. But I love how they're like, because I forget who suggested. I think it was the mom. It was Heidi, because she's just like, well, maybe we'll send her to Aunt Rhoda. Because she just disappeared from the movie for a while because they sent her to Aunt Rhoda. And I thought that was like such a weird conversation, because it just like, or you could just say, I'll send her to my sister, or because like who between like a married couple, who's gonna like call their sibling Aunt Rhoda,
Yeah, that's something you do for the kids' benefit. But I don't know, maybe, you're tired.
Maybe it's her Aunt Rhoda.
It's all emblematic of her fatigue with her daily family life. But you also brought up like the fact that I think it's a lot more interesting if they took a cue from you in terms of what would motivate him to want to kill his wife, if he really did, because they did plant the seed with him like hanging up with her and just kind of going like, bitch, this is all your fault, you, and then he just kind of like grumble, like goes off into his life. And I remember thinking like, I mean, you could have said no, like typical man, like blaming the woman, like all she wants to do is try and make you feel good and do something a little exciting, spice up the marriage, make you feel like you're still attractive, maybe check out and see like what if her skill level is still up to par, like whatever, up to code. But and then like obviously something bad happened, but I mean he could have prevented it. He could have said, you know what, no, I gotta drive, I'm so happy that you want to do this, but safety, like it's nighttime, I can't see shit, maybe we wait, or let me just pull over, honey, let me pull over and you can do anything you want, like that. That's another thing. Okay, Stephen King, I've seen full YouTube videos that are like devoted, like video essays to Stephen King and his tropes, or his just the things that he leans on, like bullies and whatever. And one of the things that I noticed for the first time that I don't recall ever seeing in any of those videos, maybe it's there and I just forgot about it, but fatal collisions, because this one has one when he runs into I even forget her name. But Tatsu's daughter.
Yeah.
I just remember she's just like, Papa, it is cold. I'll go get my coat. And I remember thinking like, is his name Papa? Because you both look like you're exactly the same age. But okay, whatever. Maybe it's like when grandma calls.
Well, no.
I know they explain it. Yeah. I know they explain it, but
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I was
sometimes. Sometimes you go and do laundry. I don't know.
No, I didn't do laundry during this movie, but no, like, but at the time I was just kind of sitting there like, wait, you're both like, and then they pointed it out. I was like, oh, well, that's weird. I guess they just have the My Big Fat Greek Wedding's dad, playing over 100 years old. That's believable. I like the hideous skin quality they gave him though, with all his little weird. What I don't even know what.
Well, and the thing on his nose too, or just
everything, and he had two different colored eyes and long, like.
I didn't think it was a different color, just like almost like he had like I don't know if he was blind in one of them, or just like it had that milkiness to it.
That like mini glazed donut thing going on.
Yeah. But what I love about
if you have that. Sorry if anybody has that, or if you love someone who has that. I don't mean. It's just they made him look really grotesque in the movie, and that was just one feature. Go on.
Okay. I was gonna on just in terms of the collision. What I loved about it is that after they hit her, there's like blood on the windshield, and the wipers are running and just like smearing the blood, which is just like it's not raining, and like it was just like one of those like stupid things that that Tom Holland was just like, well, we got to show that there's blood, and like it'll be more cinematic if it smears across the windshield. So,
no, I mean, that is something to be said. Like, for all the fatal collisions that Stephen King has in his properties, the different ways they're staged and shot. I mean, there's something to be said. Like, Creepshow 2 has a very similar feel, yet it's different. Pet Sematary, immediately thought about Pet Sematary again. There were a lot of parallels with Pet Sematary for me. Even when he was starting to get gaunt, I thought like, oh, and they'll do those like hefty cheekbones to make him look like the sister in Pet Sematary and in the basement and everything.
And there's almost like, but he had like gills too, it looked like.
It was, I mean, okay. That's one thing, is that I can always just kind of like chalk it up to there's a mysticism behind his weight loss, so it shouldn't look entirely natural all the time. Because one thing that I noticed that I was actually very grateful for, but I don't know how natural it was the double chin. Because as he lost enough weight to no longer really require the full-on suit, maybe they gave him a paunch and like put him in a jacket or something. But there was always like the fluctuating double chin, which would just kind of, and you could tell it was like kind of like strapped like behind or over like his ears, and just kind of like grew smaller and smaller, and just like a few wrinkles in it and everything like that. And I appreciated that. And then I think there was one scene in particular where he had nothing whatsoever in the whole trajectory. Like, there was one scene, I think, was it in a parking garage, a car park garage or something like that? I don't know.
Well, when he's sitting on the bench at the end, and he's like fully like white makeup.
Yes.
Like, I'm sure that was like, that's what they're probably talking about in this trivia, where they had to like get creative to make him look even thinner, because I think that that's probably him without any prosthetics on it or anything. They're just like, let's just give him like Dawn of the Dead zombie makeup at this point, just to really sell.
I think he did have cheekbones though. I think they gave him something slight like on the cheekbones, and then maybe a lot of shading underneath. But I don't know. I didn't look close enough. By that time,
I think they just contoured. They contoured.
Maybe. By that time, I have to admit, I was a little fatigued. I mean, even though, okay, the third act of this movie, or I guess what bridges the gap between the second and the third act for me, is one of the most dynamic, because I feel like it feels kind of color by number for, I'd argue, maybe the first half of the movie, where I'm just kind of like, okay, I get it. So where is this going? What's going to happen? Yeah. Like, we keep getting on like,
well, because first he's just like, there's no such thing as gypsy curses, and then he's like, he kind of like has this switch. I guess that's when he goes to visit Daniel von Bargen, is that the actor's name? From The Faculty. He was one of the teachers, and also George Costanza's boss in later seasons of Seinfeld after the Yankees.
Right.
Remember that guy?
Right.
Yeah.
More Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But but once we got to this whole, I think when he starts embracing his bad side, as it were, I think it happens after he loses his comrades, like the people who got him off. Yeah. So he had to pay no consequence for killing this poor woman. I remember there was a turning point where I got a lot of Jack Nicholson from him when what's his name from The Thing tells him like, so what are you gonna pay me to, like, so I don't tell anyone, or something like that. And he just kind of raised his eyebrows and just said, do you take traveler's checks? And I'm not doing Jack Nicholson, but I just got a very Nicholson energy from that moment.
It was very
like, okay.
It was weird, because I would have just been more like in that scenario, I would have thought that he'd be like begrudgingly like, fine, like, here's your fucking money, like, you're gonna fleece me, there you go. But he was almost like impressed by it. He's just like, oh wow, like he just saw the deviousness in Peter Maloney, and he's just like, oh wow, like I'll have what she's having,
Makes me think he wasn't exactly an ethical lawyer up until that point anyway.
Well,
like,
yeah.
Maybe he wasn't as bad as he got, but Yeah,
he was pretty shifty, for sure. 'Cause because the way that it opens, because he's representing Fat Tony. What's the character's name anyway?
Richie.
Yeah, played by Joe Mantegna. Because that's the whole thing. Yes. It's just like, oh, the Godfather or whatever. Because during that trial, I'm just like, wait, how did they? Because they just like cut that scene really quickly. Because the next thing they're on the yacht, just like eating and celebrating that he got him off. So there's like a lot that was just sort of like, wait, so what was like the tipping point? Like normally, like for me, because like I watch a lot of Judge Judy, right? So there's always like, there has to be some sort of payoff in the trial or hearing or whatever, where you find something out. Because and normally, like in any sort of movie where there is like a procedural or something, there's a moment in the case where everyone's just kind of like, or like, you know, like wild things where Bill Murray like rips off the fake neck brace. And I was waiting for that, and it just like nothing happened. The scene just transitioned, and they're sitting on the yacht, and it's just like, I guess the trial went well. Okay.
Well, see, for me, the kind of like random like of it all that would never happen in actual court was, I think it was Max Duganfield was the name of the guy, when he's the defendant, I guess, and they call him as the surprise like witness or whatever, like, you know, to give his testimony when it wasn't scheduled. And I remember thinking, like, you can't do this in court. I've seen too many things get lawyered on YouTube where like an actual lawyer sits there and like criticizes episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or The Simpsons or, you know, what have you, Legally Blonde, shit like that. And so I'm sitting there watching it, and I've seen too many of those to know that like this all would have come out in Discovery. There is no like, I'd like to call a surprise witness, Your Honor. Like, that's all dubious, you know, action for the movie on the part of the screenwriter. So so that for me was the ridiculousness of it all. And the guy buried himself, like basically sat there and had no self-awareness whatsoever. I thought that was pretty ridiculous. So I don't know, that did it.
Well, I'm almost like, I'm thinking back to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, because they had, remember they had that TMZ guy, like the ex-employee, come on, because that was like a sort of a surprise thing, because he just came on and like they contacted
more than I did. I didn't really watch.
No. I watched like a few things here or there, because it was like that was like one of the highlights, because her lawyer was just like, is this kind of like insinuated that he was doing this just for his 15 minutes, and then he's just like, well, I can say the same thing about you representing Amber Heard, and everyone was just like,
oh, that's right,
ooh, like, that's
right, I did hear that. Yeah,
but yeah, none of that would have been in Discovery. That was just sort of like a thing that, well, you know, we were calling a sudden witness to the stand. So I feel like there is a certain level of allowances in court trials where, you know, sorry to bring that up, I know that's so random, but just in my periphery of any sort of like court cases that is not Judge Judy.
So you would have liked a bigger bomb to be dropped.
Like, it wasn't necessarily a bigger bomb, because I didn't know what was going on in that moment when we're just like watching him question him, because I would have, if there had been, if like that scene had gone somewhere, because it was almost like it was just happening, and then we just suddenly cut, and we were like, symbolically we know that they did well because they're celebrating with food on a yacht, but it just
sure
it was one of those things where just like, well, then why even have the scene? Why not just like cut out the middle part and just go directly to them on a yacht and just celebrate, like, been like, oh, you did me this favor, you know, and he's just like, I'm just doing my job. He's like, I owe you my life.
Just the hand gestures. Yeah. For those of you not watching on YouTube, Zack is doing very Brando hand gestures that are, I'm living. Go on.
And anyway, I'm just saying that I was confused. Like, there was a lot of things in the movie, like that, like the thing at the end with the daughter just being like, we worked it out, where I'm just like, did I miss something? I mean, I know that like
exactly.
I can be one of those people who, you know, I'll be playing solitaire on my phone while a movie's on that I'm not always fully paying attention, but I was watching this whole thing, and there were several moments where I was just like, what? Okay. But I didn't care enough to go back and rewind.
I rewound a couple times because honestly, I started to doze off. I think I did it twice. And I went back to the point that I remembered last, where I'm just like, yeah, I remember them saying that. And I'd watch a few more lines that I remembered. And then I'd be like, okay, here we are. What was this all about? And usually it was of no consequence. But I'm glad I did it. But
It was
did you catch...
all so immaterial. To quote you.
Immaterial, Your Honor. But may I approach the bench? You'd have to build one first. I love that. Anyway, that's not in this movie, though. What is in this movie, I didn't know if you caught it, because it raised a question for me. Because I have always been with Willow of Buffy when discussing faith, saying 5 by 5.
Oh my God,
5 by
right.
5. What does that even mean? Did you notice that the doctor said your blood work is 5 by 5? And I was like, okay, Buffy wasn't out yet. Or at least the show wasn't, and that's where 5 by 5 originated.
And Faith wasn't around until like 1998.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I picked on that too, and I was just like, what the fuck? 5 by 5, as far as I know, it's a term that they use in the military. And I forget exactly. I should have looked it up. What it means, but I think like the way that he was using it was more just like everything's copacetic. And it just. I just immediately went to Faith, and I'm just like, he doesn't look like Eliza Dushku.
Yeah, right. Well, it had me wondering, is it like, so if it's 5 by 5, is that like a health or a medical term? Like your STI results are 5 by 5. Like, so that's why I was wondering.
Okay, this is what it means. 5 by 5 is a radio communications expression that means loud and clear. One of the 5s represents the S units of reception strength. The other 5 is a rating of the signal clarity. Which, I mean, even if you consider like Faith in Buffy, like saying 5 by 5, because like in the context that she uses it, it's just like everything's 5 by 5. But she's not saying like, like, do you like no one's asking her like, do you understand that? And her being like 5 by 5, they're just like, how's everything going? She's just like, I'm 5 by 5, like.
Right.
You're not even using it properly. Like I can just see Faith Lahane, like before she even like became like canon to Buffy, she's just kind of like sitting in her trailer or whatever she grew up or whatever, and her mom's like got movies on or whatever, and they're just like put thinner on, and it's just like the VHS, and she's watching this scene, and the doctor just like, yeah, you're 5 by 5, and she's just like, oh, that sounds so badass. Yeah, that.
Probably
she cracks her knuckles.
Yeah, right. Probably would have been more appropriate for her to say things like 10-4, good buddy, or something like that. But so anyway, that stood out to me, and I wanted to ask you about that. Also, I do have to say, like, here I'm complaining about like the first half of the movie, but two things that I did appreciate were the judge and Duncan, his friend. I guess the cop. I guess that's what he was. I can barely remember now. It's already fleeting from my head. But the fact that we get to see Duncan all Cronenberged up and everything like that
in the dream, Duncan.
When he finds him, he offers him the gun to like kill him. I mean, really Cronenberged up, because Jeff Goldblum does just that in The Fly. Like, here's a gun, kill me, and this guy Billy. Doesn't do it, and then as he leaves, we hear that gunshot go off, and we're left to speculate, because television, leaves open doors all the time. Like, you heard a gunshot, but do you know if he actually shot himself? And we never do we ever get it confirmed?
No, because they're at his funeral later on. But what I found funny about that is that he goes home, because he doesn't go back in the house and check, but he goes home and he's telling his wife Heidi, and he's just like, I just went to see Duncan, and it's just like, he had a gun, and when I left I heard a gunshot, and he was almost saying it with like glee on his face. He was just like, kind of like, I think he might have killed himself, and I'm just like, you're a piece of shit. And then the next scene was like them at the funeral, because that's when, remember, he got in the car and he was looking over, and they were like kind of huddling close together, and that's even then, like, if there was an affair, he wasn't like looking at them with like, they're having an affair. He was just more like annoyed with her, because it was like, fuck you, bitch. But
Right,
what I
right,
loved
right.
is that, like, as he was getting thinner, because there was the one scene where he did go to his tailor to get new clothes. But even
Right.
then, he must have given up at one point because, like, when they walked out of the funeral, his suit was already so baggy, like he was like looked like
Well,
a
he was still losing weight.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It's just like it's like a 15-year-old who, like, goes to dinner at
Puts on his dad's.
some like country club with the parents, and they're like, oh, you have to wear a suit to like come in here, and then they just
Right.
have like
wear
an
your
adult-
dad's sports coat.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Also, okay, were you creeped out at all by the tailor? Just one thing. The guy was licking his lips while he was measuring his waist, and he was like face to face with the guy's crotch, and I was just like, that's the last thing in the world I would ever want my tailor to do, is to be like measure my waist, fine, but don't be face to face with my crotch and start going, and I'm like, ew, what's going on? And it wasn't like he wasn't perverse. I didn't believe there was any nefarious motive, that the tailor was now going to be a storyline in this already odd movie, but it just unsettled me.
I think I don't know what it,
because you brought up the tailor and it made me remember.
I think that it was just sort of like probably Tom Holland just wanted as much like insanity in this movie as possible, that like every extra or like small role, he just wanted to make them like really weird. Maybe he didn't have enough faith in what's his name, Robert Burke, as a leading man, that he's just like, we need to distract it with like everyone else, because I was the one performance that like she basically steals the movie is whoever I don't know the actress, but she plays Lita Rossington, the wife of the judge who turns into the lizard skin. Because that whole scene with her, I was just like, holy shit, she's just going for it.
Yeah, that's why I opened with her quote.
She was chewing up that scenery like it was tobacco, and it was like that should be like a dramatic reading, but just like everything about that bit and that performance. And I love like later on when he called her, like after he had the nightmare, like the premonition, and she's on the phone and like clearly like this bitch does not like him, but she's just like, I'm sorry, Carrie can't come to the phone right now, and he's just like, and he's like, yeah, he crashed his whatever happened, but she was just
his
so
car, and he burned up.
She was so casual about it.
It was really a happy ending. Yeah. She says it was really a happy ending of sorts. He always did want to be cremated, and then she just hangs up on him. And I was like, that is a boss move. Like, I want to be in her movie. Like,
I was even thinking about, because when we finally did, I mean, I couldn't remember if we saw the lizard judge, because who even knows if that's what he looked like, because that was just his dream later on. But I was just thinking, I was just like, I want to see that movie. Like, not that I was like bored of like Thinner, but everything from the sounds of like how she was describing like him turning into a lizard, I'm just like, where's that movie? And I love like well, no, I just want to say when they're in the showers there, and he has like the thing on his chest,
right, the little bit,
and
right here,
he's just like regaling the story of how the gypsy guy came up to him, and he's just like, and he just put his hand there, and he said lizard, and then there's this sound effect that's just like or like this, and it's just like, oh my god, that's so terrible, but it's amazing.
Yeah,
we needed more of that. But,
well, that's the thing. That's the whole thing about why I would, even after not having the most favorable response to this movie, after sitting through it, I would read the book, because something like that, like with Lita, when she's discussing Rossington's, I think his name's Carrie. When she's discussing her husband Carrie's, like what he's going through and everything like that, I can imagine sitting there and reading it and having Stephen King's descriptive prose, like about like her, like, is she holding a drink? Is she holding a cigarette? What is she doing with it while she's telling this story? Just completely getting me locked away. And as I'm listening to what she's telling me, all I have is my imagination to think like he's somewhere and that's exactly what he looks like. And I'm not worried about ever seeing him, because I'm already seeing it, like, by reading about it in a movie. Of course I want to see it, of course. And then by the time we did, before I knew it was a nightmare, it was weird as fuck for sure, that nightmare that he had. But so was a lot of the movie. So I thought it was really happening, and that. But then, because even Tatsu is like chasing him from one end of the bridge, and then all of a sudden he's driving, I think, what was it, a big rig or a van?
I thought
at the other end of the bridge.
No, because I think that there was a truck that was coming onwards, and
it was
he
a
like
truck.
swerved into the road to get hit by the truck, but then the gypsy guy was following in what looked like a school bus, and every time they kind of like, because they did this shot, they kept going back to him, and he was like bouncing up and down, and like he had this like maniacal like twinkle in his eye. He kind of reminded me of like Danny DeVito in Batman Returns, just kind of like
yeah. While he's laughing in the little the little Batmobile ride.
that they've rigged.
I mean, I definitely got that too, but at the same time I was sitting there going like, how'd he get there? Well, maybe these Romani gypsies, like they have the power to curse. Maybe they have the power to teleport or something. Exactly. And I was like, I was ready. I was ready to go as paranormal as this movie would take me. And then when he woke up, I was like, oh.
I was kind of let down too, because I was just like, oh wow, they just turned it up for this scene. Because there were so many things. Because I was just like, why is nobody reacting to them? like he just walks up to the carnival thing, and they're basically like assaulting him, and she starts chasing him. Like she pulls out the slingshot, and he's just running away. Nobody's like stopping. Like there's no security or anything. And I don't know what she had in those like pellets or whatever, because I mean it went right through the car window, but then later on in real life when he was awake, it like punctured it like full on like From Dusk Till Dawn Quentin Tarantino getting shot through the hand. Right. But by the way, so what is that character's name? The great granddaughter.
Her name was Gina, and her husband was Gabe.
Yeah.
Her
so
beautiful husband.
Carrie, or is it Carrie Wooher, who plays her?
Yeah.
So she was in one of the awful Hellraiser sequels. I believe it was the 7th entry, Hellraiser Deader. And she plays this investigative journalist. And the whole fucking, like, I watched this movie and I couldn't even tell you what it was about, but I loved like the beginning of the movie is her waking up in this crack den, and you're supposed to think like she's lives there or whatever, but she just wakes up out of nowhere. She takes out a camera, starts taking pictures of everything, and then she gets up and leaves, and I think someone says something to her, and she's just like, no, I got everything I needed. Next scene, she's like walking into a newspaper office, and everyone's like, hey, Amy was her name. She's like, great article. And she's like, thanks, whatever. Picks it up, and it was like front page news, and it was like one of those like BuzzFeed like clickbait stories. It was like how to be a crack whore. Was the title of the article, and it's just like a picture of like literally someone's picture she took without their permission in this crack den. And because I was watching her, I'm just like, where do I know her from? And it was
very familiar face.
Yeah, so she went on to do some great stuff, but
good for her. Well, I mean, in this movie, the way she's introduced, like while they're gazing at her through the window, Bill and I can't remember if it was Walter Bobbie or somebody else, but or was it the judge? I don't know. Whoever it was, they're like looking out the window and seeing her and take this quarter and go ask her to, I don't know, do something nasty. I try not to hold on to it. But then she has that interesting, again, this is something that told me this movie is apeshit, because he had that moment where where Bill comes down the stairs, goes out onto the sidewalk. The caravan is still there and all set up with their carnival and everything like that. Yeah. And I guess she's dancing, and then she just kind of locks eyes with him, and he just kind of smiles sheepishly, and she, I think, reproduces the coin, or a coin that resembles the coin he was supposed to give her, and pulls it from her breast, from her chest. And then she continues to gyrate and even
she like
expose
lifts up her
dress.
her
underpants,
yeah,
her little G-stringy like sequined number,
Yeah.
the eye patch that she's wearing down there, and then all of a sudden turns fully aggressive, like "fuck you,"
flips him off, yeah.
flips him off and spits. And
She
she
did
does
a lot of
of that in
spitting,
this
yeah.
movie. A lot of spitting. And then goes away. And I remembered, like, kind of, even as it was going on, being kind of, like, endeared to her because I thought, oh, this is her way of letting him know I know exactly what you were saying about me. And see how pretty I am? See what you were talking about? Aren't you happy that I'm showing you? Yeah, fuck you and fuck man. Just completely, this is what I think about you and your needle dick. You know, like whatever. Just closing up shop and just sprint, you know, like not sprinting away, but just pulling off in a hurry like she did. So she was already a character that I was looking forward to seeing more of. So then when we get to her with her mystical slingshot in the nightmare, and then finding out that it's something that's real, and then seeing, okay, because she's a big part of like this section of the movie that I felt like, okay, I'm in this now, because what is going on? Because it starts with Richie being reintroduced to the movie. And he's talking to Bill, and they bring up this committal absentia thing about like putting somebody away, like, you know, like if they run away from their home and everything like that, and they can't make decisions for themselves anymore. Like he just kind of throws it out there as an option, and Bill seems really kind of like, you know, put off by it and maybe a little hurt. And then you can see Richie take that in, and that's when I guess he makes the decision that he's going to be in league with Bill from here on out. He's not going to let anything happen to this guy who saved his life, who got him off.
Yeah.
So I guess, interesting step one, but he gives strychnine to the dogs of the Romani people. I didn't know that they were their dogs at first. I was just kind of like, I see a bunch of dogs in little kind of makeshift kennels, and he's giving them strychnine. And I'm like, what's going on? This is not okay. And then I found out, like, he put up the sign that said, "White man says, take it off." Because he already implored with them to take the curse off, and they wouldn't do it. So then he goes to this guy. Frank Spurton is the name. I don't know the spelling. I just wrote it the way it sounds. And I'm watching the two of them interact. He was the mook.
Yeah.
And even that line, he was a mook, but he was my mook. Yeah. I got a little sexual tension between the two of them in their last interaction. They were very, very close to each other. And Frank Spurton, I was just getting male, like, gigolo, like, like just gigolo vibes from him. And I wondered, is that what he does on the side? But it's kind of like I'll do anything for money, because I love you, honey. You know, like, I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but because Fat Tony, like, you know, you're my through and through. Yeah. But then he gets stripped out almost immediately. I thought that was going to go somewhere, but then we discover him with. Like was it his eyes? Like the chicken and head in his mouth for sure. But did he have his eyes gouged out or something too? I don't remember. Something messy.
And there was something like written on his forehead.
Never on his forehead.
Yeah. So you never. So you want to read the thinner. A little Betty. You want to read the thinner book because you want to see if there was like some sort of like gay. Storyline or context, just like fully explain what this relationship
it was. Wouldn't be the first time that Stephen King just kind of lumped us in there, you know, like, so I'd be open to it.
If anyone or you are interested, this is there's a book on tape that's actually read or narrated by Joe Mantegna, so you can listen to the whole story.
Oh my god!
As told by Fat Tony.
Oh wow. Okay, I don't. Ooh, yeah. I may have to read it on my own first just to get the story, because sometimes my daydream when I listen to books on tape. I'm not that good with books on tape. Podcasts, sure. Music, great. Music that I'm into. But anyway, so that's when, at this point in the movie, Richie starts using the word "gyp." And I'll put it in quotes.
Oh no, they were using it from the beginning, because remember all of the
that's
the judges
true.
were just like, oh, those.
But
gyps.
I mean, it was like every other word at this point. Like I was just like, wow. And also, anytime, like it sounds offensive to me, and if somebody thinks it isn't offensive, the fact that he always has the word "that" in front of it. Anytime you describe anybody by like, you know, some kind of identifier, whether it's their race or their religion or their sex or their identity or what have you, their age, their size, etc., whatever their orientation, whatever it is, if you put a that in front of that descriptor, it sounds bad. It's going to sound like you're a bigot or like you're, you know, prejudiced against them. So there's no love lost on Richie, the character. I love Joe Mantegna. Richie, not so much, because then he binds Gabe in this makeshift battlefield. Like I don't remember how he baits him over, but he gets him behind a log.
Well, I think he was like on the outskirts of their little
caravan
camp there, and that's because he ambushed him from behind, and he already had him tied up, and then he released him to go running back and get shot by them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he releases him, and how they didn't know that was Gabe, I'll never know, because it looked like Gabe to me.
Well, it was the 90s. Everything was like, you know, very brightly lit. How does
everyone
Tara
had weird
describe
hair?
it? Yeah. Yeah. Weird hair and brightly lit.
So he doesn't even kill Gabe. He has them kill Gabe, which maybe it makes more sense in the book again.
Yeah.
Like visually, I'm like, that's clearly Gabe. Like,
Yeah.
and also I don't remember if he had time to like gag him or anything. Like, wouldn't Gabe have been like, hey, it's Gabe, don't shoot me, I'm one of you? But whatever. But it clearly the situation is being escalated. Like Richie doesn't have a problem turning the heat up on the problem, because the next thing he does is bait, because he's not recognizable. None of the Romani people saw him do that, so they don't know he's the cause. They all attribute it to the white man from town, and which is Bill. So he baits Gina to was it a barn that he took her to?
Yeah.
It looked like a barn.
Well, because they're just like identify the suspect.
Right. And that's when he basically discloses his true identity. I'm the reason that, you know, your husband was killed, your husband Gabe. And then he throws, I don't remember what he said it was like baking soda and something else. Like in
baking soda and pop. Well, it wouldn't have been pop, because that's not a term used.
I mean, some people in
I think he
Northern
just said it was like, I
United
think it's
States.
just like soda, baking soda and soda, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, to make her think it was acid.
Maybe
so
he said
threw it on her
baking
face to make
powder
her-
and soda, just so there was no like redundancy in the
maybe.
dialogue. Yeah.
Or seltzer? Maybe he said seltzer. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Doesn't
seltzer.
matter.
Yeah.
He threw something on her face that was not acid, that was harmless, but let her believe it was acid. And she freaked out and then realized it was fake. And that's when he starts kind of like lowering the boom on her. Physical abuse ensues. Bill is just standing there kind of like, no. But what can he really do? At the same time, I still blame him. But
it was so weird that he had like more empathy for them, or just like her, than like maybe his wife or whatever. Like at that point, I was just like, it's just like, oh no, this is not the gypsy's fault. Like, or just like at least anyone else there, even though they like, because supposedly it was like her and her husband that murdered Richie's gigolo. Because they were the ones that, like, because remember they're like, get out of town, like you've already been made or whatever, and he's like, okay, and he drops his keys and they walk over, and they're the last thing that we see that he sees before he shows up dead later on. So yeah, it was just, there wasn't a lot of like, again, like just from point A to point B of just like understanding like the character's emotional journey, or like, you know, how he was making these decisions, or just like, you know, that's why like his decision to just like murder his wife, it was just like, where did this all come from? It was very sudden. And for him to like be so forgiving of, because I don't think he was, it was almost like once Richie started turning up the heat on them, he's just kind of like, this is going too far. Like it was like he was having this epiphany. This like
I would
moral
love to see a version. Yeah. The moral center.
Well, no, it's just like he's having this like moral epiphany, but yet he's still like so dead set on passing this curse off to his wife. Like it was just like none of that made any sense at all. Like it was.
Well, while Richie is taking control of the situation. I thought that what Bill may have, I want to see a cut of this now, a cut of the movie where Bill goes full like Maria from West Side Story on like both of them, and just kind of goes like, no, you stand back, and just like, and then gets the gun from Richie and says, how do you shoot this gun, Richie? By pulling this little trigger. And it says, you killed him, Frank. You killed Frank Spurton. Well, now I can kill, not with bullets and guns, but with hate. And now I can kill because now I have hate. But he didn't have the energy to do that, so that wouldn't make any sense.
The whole thing of just like when he goes to the camp, because first he's kind of like, you like take like what you're doing is wrong, like you take this off of me or whatever, and they're just like, no, like you know what you did was wrong. And that's when he's kind of like, then he gets on his knees and he starts pleading. And then it was like when she shot the thing into his hand, that the whole like, oh, I'll put a white man curse on you. And it was like, they started laughing at him, but it was just like, so now you're like appropriating like gypsy culture. Like,
right. The curse of the white man from town. I know how to do it. I'll show you.
But it's just, no, but it like, but it was almost like he sort of got consumed by like almost this gypsy energy. Cause at the end of the movie, like when, after he kills his wife, he says like, he calls her something. He's just like white woman from town, white wife. And then like when he lets the doctor in at the end, he's just like white doctor from town. It's just like, is he possessed at this point? Like what is going on? I mean, I know that there's always like some sort of gray area in like how gypsy curses work in things, but I mean, you talk about how like you kind of like got more into the second part of the movie, and I agree it's more exciting at that point, but I think that what I would have liked more from this is kind of like the aspect of like just going back to him and his obsession with food and everything. Cause I think that what was really cool about it, like it seemed like that what the gypsies, they just wanted like death and destruction. They were just trying to kill these people for wronging their family. And they were going to like inflict this like torturous thing on them, like the lizard or thinner. Right. But what I liked about like the earlier part of the movie, which was interesting to me, is how he kind of realized very quickly that if I stop eating, I'm going to die. Like I need to eat to continue to just like keep my weight stabilized to a point where it's just like with every passing day, he has to eat more and more calories. And what I think would have been interesting if they leaned into that aspect more. Cause I always like, you know, go back to like the 7 deadly sins and just like, you know, the idea of that. Cause like gluttony would be his, because he's already a person when we're introduced to him, is just like he's eating in excess to a point where it's like it's overindulgent, where you're not even enjoying the like what, because gluttony is not just relegated to food or overeating food. It's just the description of it is more of just like an overindulgence in anything. But it's usually associated with food, and especially because of the movie Seven. But what I wish they had done is just leaned more into that and just kind of gotten him to a point where this is now his life, where he's not even in the one thing that he enjoyed the most, which was food, he can't even enjoy anymore. Because it didn't seem, I didn't read that from him. He was just casually eating more, and he's just like, yeah, I just got to keep eating. But it would have been great if he just got to a point where he's just like, I can't eat anymore. Like I think like it did happen psychologically, but that wasn't translated into the movie, because it was more so like the curse was just catching up. It was just moving too fast that death was inevitable. And I would have loved if that was the thing. It was almost like you took away the one thing that I loved in my life, which was food, because now it's just like I'm eating it just to stay alive, just like because it's necessary. And that would have been like such a much better punishment than like the inevitable death that comes with the curse. That I think that you know, had they leaned into that more side of just like kind of like the morality of that and like the deadly sin aspect, rather than just being him like, oh, I've got to like pass this curse on to my, like it just really became about like the gypsy culture, the gypsy curse and all that. And I mean, I like how like crazy it got, but I think that was where the movie was the most interesting to me, and it kind of took a detour from that, and that's where I think this movie would have been better if it had just been more so about him and his relationship to food, because that's even associated with the title of the movie.
Sure, and that's another thing that I'd have to speculate about, or that I have to speculate until I read the book. But it makes me wonder if in the book, because Stephen King makes the internal external just by reading about what people's thoughts are. You get to find out what they're musing on and what's bothering them and stuff like that, and maybe there is something of that, and the only way you can really represent it is if you showcase it in like a private moment, or actually give him somebody to bounce something off of, and for him to like, because that would have been great, a little self-reflection.
He could have even we could have even just seen him like hovering over a toilet and throwing up, because I mean, like, everyone has had that, if you eat too much and you get sick, and it eventually just comes up, like, just even showed something like that. Just you don't have to have an inner monologue. You just have to see that, like, clearly eating has gotten to a point where it's too much. Like you mentioned the scene earlier with Josh Lucas and his cameo. Because he's given this like banana split or whatever, and he takes like 2 bites out of it, and he just like puts it down and walks away. But it wasn't like he didn't
find other food.
He didn't put it down like out of disgust. Like he didn't finish it. He just kind of was just like, okay, I don't like your chipper energy, and I don't need this clinic because this is not what's ailing me, and like, oh, that. Right. So yeah, they definitely, I think that they made some mistakes there. I mean, of course, it depends on what Stephen King's book was about, but I mean, like, how like it feels like all of the Stephen King properties are being remade nowadays anyway. Like this might be a good one to remake.
The lesser known ones.
Yeah, just like what, because I think that they could do this movie very well from like a different approach. Who do you think would play him?
Ooh, well, I mean, not Brendan Fraser, because he's already riding high on the whale, so we don't need to see him in another fat suit. But
unless that's his thing.
I wonder. I don't know. Because also, I mean, it does beg like kind of like a somewhat ethical question about casting people and putting them in fat suits in the first place. I haven't seen The Whale yet. I'm kind of like, the only reason I want to see it now is because I heard Hong Chow is in it from The Menu, and she got nominated. I don't remember which award. I don't think it's an Oscar, but she got nominated for Best Supporting Actress in something, and I'm just like, oh, cool.
No, I think she's nominated for
incentive.
The Oscar.
For an Oscar? Yeah. Oh, sweet.
I don't follow the Oscars, but I
neither do
I.
Well,
because the one like the famous award show musical number that we all know, like Angela Bassett did the thing, because that, I think, Hong Chow was like the first
Viola Davis, the Woman King. Yes. Living on in infamy now.
Yeah.
But
what is the thing?
If you say the thing one more time, okay, we can't get lost.
No, we're going to go off on
but okay, tangent. But I mean, I did appreciate, because the cursed pie, I just wrote in giant capital letters, "Cursed pie," with like a bunch of question marks when it happened, and because I was just kind of like, where are we? What is this movie now? And I love the way Michael Constantine, the actor who plays Tatsu, just says, "Die clean, white man from town. Die clean." And just kind of backs away like into the ether.
He may as well have just like disappeared into the mist.
Yeah, right? If he would have just disappeared, like actually like dissipated before his eyes just dematerialized, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. I would have been like, oh, because
at that point the movie could have done anything.
Right. But so he serves her the pie, like, so she'll be cursed and everything like that. And that made me, I spent a lot of the movie not knowing where I stood with Bill. But then once he seemed so dead set on killing her and so happy, because that was the thing. Woke up the next morning and was like, "Honey, you are," and like pulls the blanket down and reveals that hideous face of hers where she's just, it looks like the pie just kind of exploded like Season of the Witch style out of her face. Like, you you can't tell if it's blood and if it's her blood or if it's his blood or if it's the strawberry or what it is.
Well, because he's making out with her and it's just like...
Yeah, and then tastes it, like licks his lips, like strawberry, and I'm like, gross.
But the best part of that fucking exchange, because he's just like, oh, I would have some more, but I think if I have too much, then I'll get the, it'll go back into me, the curse. And I'm just like, well, how do you know that where was it even established that the rules were you can have a little taste? Like, it was just like, there was just weird shit that he probably already cursed himself again at that point anyway.
Probably. I think maybe that's the justice of it all. But I remember as soon as that happened, he was getting ready to get up and stuff. I was like, oh, wait, the daughter's going to have eaten some, isn't she? And then he went downstairs and he saw the 2 plates. And I was like, fuck, his daughter had some. I know she did. And then, of course, she did. And then just to be sure, she like took her fingers. Who does this? Who just like this is a family pie, and she just takes her 2 fingers and like digs into it and like right.
Or, not only is it a family pie, but I love that he when Dr. Mike comes to the door, he's just like, oh, I have this wonderful breakfast pie that you should try. Like,
yeah, right.
When has a pie ever been referred to as a breakfast pie? Like, I just assumed that was
his quiche, but not a fruit pie. I'm trying to think if I've ever.
But no. But it was just like, it was more of his way of like persuading him to like come in and have it, because it's like it's okay. It's a breakfast pie. It's what we do here. It's what we do here in this household, is we have pie for breakfast.
Pie for breakfast. Well,
we call it breakfast pie.
Yeah, right. Why not? But and then he lets him in and everything like that, and all devious and everything. And then it just ends. Yeah. And I was just kind of like, what? What did I just
That's
watch?
The 90s for
like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, again, some movies do it, and I'm just kind of like, oh, and I have to throw my hands up and start applauding, like American Werewolf in London, the way it just, end of movie, or the way a lot of Argento movies end. Like, we've talked about this before. There were movies we've talked about on this pod where I don't have as favorable a take on the way they just, and the movie's over. And this is one of them. Let this join the leagues of, I don't even remember what the other movies were, but it just kind of ends, and I was just kind of like, well, I could have watched more movie, actually. You won me back, because you were so, like, it was such a mind fuck. I wish there were a little bit, or even if he didn't just close the door, if he could have closed the door and we could have gotten like either a dolly shot or even a crane shot would have been great. Just to kind of like pull back from the house and just kind of like just get like this shot of like the neighborhood and just like think like it looks like a quiet, quaint little town while all of these nefarious goings on are happening behind the closed doors of this otherwise lovely looking home.
You see children on bicycles going by.
Yes,
it's like Jamie Lee Curtis. It's just like the Halloween ends needs to end with children on bikes. That's the only way we can establish that Laurie's life is going to be okay from now on.
But when you do it ironically, like I like that, hearing the cha-ching, cha-ching, you know, of like the bikes that the kids are riding, and then, you know, kids playing ball or whatever, and then parents going out for a picnic, you know, like whatever, like, you know, it's like neighborhood, suburban shit.
Do you know what the budget was on this?
No, what was it?
$17 million.
Where did it go? Okay, it went to the special effects. It went to the special effects. That's where it went. Did
it cost that much though?
I mean, does anything? I mean, we don't know what they cut. We don't know but no, that's ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, also maybe just like to put the air in the hose to go up Bill's bum when he in between takes, if he did, I don't know. But that's weird. I hear multi-million-dollar budgets on movies like this, and I'm like, and it still looks like it was made for TV. Like, I was shocked to find out it was a theatrical release.
That's crazy. And like, unlike like nowadays where movies are made on a budget and they look extraordinary. Like even like speaking of like
Yeah.
the new Halloweens, like those were made for so cheap, all of them, and the production values.
Yeah, but the yeah, but the rhetoric that gets touted a lot these days is that, and I haven't heard any recently, but like definitely for like the, let's say from 2010 to 2020, certainly the rhetoric surrounding studio films certainly was that they're either giant budget things or tiny budget things, and there's no like midway anymore. There's nothing that gets made for more than like I don't know what, like than 17 million now, which is not a lot now.
Yeah.
Or less than like 200 million.
Yeah.
It's like you either swing for the fences or you just bunt, and that's it.
Yeah. And
So
anything else you wanted to say about Thinner? Because I'm running out.
Okay, the only thing that I thought was kind of noteworthy from the research that I did was Stephen King was motivated allegedly to write this when he went on a diet, and he found it wasn't working. He wasn't losing the weight, and he decided he was going to channel his anger into a character who was losing more weight than he could fathom, but it was a bad thing. He was going to punish someone for losing by having them lose weight, and yeah, I guess that's how he rationalized it. Okay. I thought that was kind of adorable and made Stephen King even more human. And arguably, I'd say the pharmacist is also a somewhat sympathetic character in the movie. So there's that.
Well, yeah, because he gets up there and he's like trying to give his testimony, and the judge is just like, "All right, we've had enough of you. Go sit down." Well, he was almost like putting words in his mouth, and because he's just like, "Oh, you saw her run out," and he's like, "Well, no, I didn't see that." And he's just like, "Well, then you're no good to me. Sit down."
Yeah, what does it mean when Stephen King is one of the most benign people in the world that you're depicting? Like, although he's a pretty cool guy, I don't get a lot of malice from him except for people who are trying to disenfranchise other people, like on Twitter and everything. Good for him. Love Stephen King. Love you, Stephen King.
All right,
That's what I have to say.
Let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we kill people. On purpose.
All right, we need to pick a cherry on top. I feel like this is a no-brainer, but it's got to be Lita Rossington.
Yes. Thank you.
What, did you have someone else in mind?
I mean, there were other contenders, like the two other like decent people in towns, the pharmacist and Linda. Like, but they don't compare to Lita. And
I feel like a lot of your like idealism comes out in the cherry on top because you're more fixated on like the virtuous people. I'm just thinking of like who brought the drama. Who gave good movie, and it was definitely Lita.
Yeah, I agree with you. Who makes a splash? And she does. She
does
made
make
ripples.
Yeah. Well, she had several. She was like double fisting because she had the martini, and she's like, "You're gonna need this. You're gonna need this." Oh, I thought that when he came into the house there, and she was giving him the martini, that Carrie was actually upstairs, like under the covers with the like lizard makeup. Oh, because. Yeah, because all she did was like,
yeah, actually, I did too, right?
Yeah, because she's just like telling him about it in that scene. But then she had like that big tumbler, and I don't know what was in there. Maybe it was baking powder and soda because she threw it on him when he stumbled out the door.
But it didn't fizz, so she shook it too much. It killed the seltzer.
Maybe, but yeah, she's very. I mean. Weird, because this is such an obscure movie, at least like by the standards of what we typically cover. I think probably like I'd say that like Single White Female was the last movie that was probably like more on the lesser side. Well, I mean we did Tenebrae as well, but of just like in this era of like the early 90s or like early to mid. Where a lot of these movies did feel like TV movies. But I'm glad that we were able to find a cherry on top this time.
Me too.
Having said that, for the cherry picker, last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in Child's Play 2. I nominated Phil. You nominated Joanne. Both The Simpsons. across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. The final vote came to 981 for Phil Simpson versus 113 for Joanne.
Wow, that's more than I was expecting. Thanks, guys. Thanks for trying.
Thank you for choosing me. But maybe you'll get the winning streak back soon. We'll see.
It'll happen.
Let's hear what the good people have to say. Dylan Jameson, Phil hands down. From what I remember, Joanne actually tries with Andy and doesn't turn against Andy fully until after Phil dies. How's it hanging, Phil? Whereas Phil is the one that talks shit about Andy and is close to against him from the start. Right. They had "How's it hanging, Phil" in quotes, so I think I was supposed to read it. Hamish, definitely Phil. He fits the category of bad husband. P.S. Love from Glasgow, Scotland. You guys are so awesome and have made Tuesdays great.
Oh man,
Tuesdays great
days.
That's
so cool.
Yeah. Glad to hear.
Oh, thank you.
Julian Van Wagoner. I'm surprised Miss Kettlebell isn't on here for locking Andy in a classroom unsupervised, even if there wasn't a killer doll after him. That's just irresponsible.
That's true, but I like her. I mean, the actress. I don't know. She upsets me, but I love it. I don't know.
Rob Rangel. I say Phil because he was always pretty antagonistic towards Andy. A bit surprised Joanne was chosen over people like the toy company owner or Ms. Kettlewell. I even said that to you. Well, I think because because you were really coming down on Joanne throughout the episode. I'm just like, you haven't said anything bad about the CEO. You're just, I think
his time will come. His time will come.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobuo 810. Joanne had a good guy doll ready in her child's room for Andy. Phil at least was honest with everyone that he didn't feel they were equipped to foster a child like Andy. And then Joanne dumps Andy after Phil's death. Did she think Andy killed him? I mean, Andy just goes back to the orphanage instead of a police station. Both were insufferable, but Joanne was a fake nice, which is worse in my opinion.
Thank you. Awesome.
Okay, well let's get something straight. She didn't plant that good guy doll. That was there before they even left to go to the orphanage to pick up Andy and hear about his story with the good guy doll. And like she said, she
hears the story and it doesn't even occur to her oh, we have a good guy doll.
Well, because she was
rid of it and hide it before I take him to his room.
Well, because she was more focused on things like fixing him eggs.
You're a Joanne apologist.
I am.
Look at you.
Well, I'm more of a Jenny. No,
you know what?
Jenny, how did we say? What was it? A gooter?
Agater.
I'm gonna say a gooter.
Jenny Agater.
Agater.
That's how Griffin Dunn and David Naughton pronounced her name on the commentary for American Werewolf in London.
I would say a gooter because wasn't there's the German kid on The Simpsons, since everything's being tied to The Simpsons lately. Wasn't his name Gooter?
I thought he was Ooter.
Ooter, right? Maybe.
I don't think it's spelled Utter though.
Gooter,
somebody confirm that.
Maybe it's just a gutter.
Agater.
Jenny a gutter.
No, accent on the A. Agater.
All right.
But as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, but anyway. But
Alan,
I agree with you 100%. She needs to go. Go ahead.
Alan Payne. Wait, this is a real question? Joanne at least tried with Andy. Phil was the absolute worst from the beginning. Phil.
I love it. I love it. People criticize it like these were choices we made independent of each other. Like one of us doesn't always get the first choice, and the other one has to go. Well, who do I?
Yeah, but I mean, you also had other choices. So
I did, but I don't feel that way.
I don't think that they were acting like it was you didn't have a choice.
Sometimes
that
I
the
wonder. Sometimes even in the exchanges I have with some people, they're just like, "Why would you do that?" And I'm like, "Because the other one was chosen. He got the first choice." Like, oh,
Sorry, do people message you and
oh yeah,
criticize your?
not criticize, but question. Sometimes people are just like, "Why would you ever decide that?" And I'm like, "Because I didn't get first choice that week, and there was nobody." Sometimes, in some cases, there's one clear choice, and then it's like, "Well, I need to make a case for."
If
someone
I'm
else
getting
now.
these messages, I'm forgetting about them completely because
Oh, okay.
all my exchanges are positive.
Well, I'm not bothered by them. I just kind of answer in kind and just say, "You understand the structure. Like Zack got first choice, and they're usually just like, oh, right. Like, it's not like these aren't campaigns we're waging. Like,
It's
anyway,
war.
go on.
It's war. Someone's
It's
keeping
war!
tabs out there of like who has the most at this point. But
Not me.
okay, Phil W. Phil, without a doubt, never wanted to be a parent and is a jerk to Andy. Only positive thing I can say about him is he has a sweet name. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Anthony DiPuzzo. Phil is the worst. Andy had to worry about Phil just as much as Chucky, and the fact he was a foster father is horrifying. Grant Dempsey. Joanne for daring to presume Andy's favorite color, blue. Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thanks, Sutter Kane. How about you ask the kid what he likes?
Thank you.
Everyone, sorry, Planet Paperboy. Everyone says Phil, but if Joanne listened to him, she would still be alive.
Ooh.
Green Hair 77. Phil is absolutely the worst. Although I would have picked Grace Poole. She gives out Andy's confidential information over the phone without batting an eye and dismisses poor Andy and Kyle, ultimately leading to her death. Joanne was a sweetheart for the most part and had a grief reaction after losing her husband. Not ideal, but understandable in the circumstances.
I disagree entirely, but let's move on.
Blake, the sequel. Joanne deserved a better death scene. That's always been my one issue with Child's Play 2.
Yeah, I want to see her die.
Yeah, I agree. Chase Ward. Phil by a ridiculously large margin. Joanne should have lived. I think she should have died, regardless. I do agree. They both should have, but
Yeah,
him
they're
more so.
terrible. They're terrible.
Blake Franklin 88. How's it hanging, Phil? I didn't do that. I didn't do that very well.
There we go. Payday.
Yeah. Jaboni 66. Neither. The TV cut went deeper into their struggles with conceiving. Even if Phil was stern at times, his frustrations came from somewhere deeper. I think they did the best they could do. Was Phil flawed? Yes, but he was still a good man. TV cut. What do you know of that?
I know nothing of that. Also, just in terms of like the argument, no, the best thing they could do if their heart isn't really in fostering children is not fostering children until they figure out something else that they actually both want to do, which is why I don't know.
I want to see this TV cut now. I need to find
Yeah,
this
me too.
TV cut.
They need to release it. Release the TV cut. Maybe Scream Factory.
Yeah. Well, they just released the 4K, and I don't think it was on. Maybe it was. I don't know. I haven't fully immersed myself in it yet.
Zack.
Rowena Potter. This was a hard choice because they are both horrible. I actually cheered Chucky on to kill the kid, but he wasn't a choice. Picking the mom because she let the dad get away with treating the kid horribly was whiny and weak.
Ooh. I like her point.
That Andy needed to die? Okay.
No, that that she was whiny and weak. No, I don't understand that one. I love Andy, especially in this movie. But whatever. No judgment.
Howell puns. This is tough because they're both so insufferable. My chunky Geordie, Jessica, she should have known her toxic husband couldn't handle kids. she doesn't deserve them. I think they meant Joanne, but yeah.
Oh, called her Jessica. Okay.
Jessica.
She doesn't deserve them.
Jessica.
Wow. That is a sentence. All right.
Silent Saturn. Honestly, neither. Definitely not Joanne, who is nothing but kind and caring towards Andy. And I'm not going to hold it against her for lashing out at Andy when it looks like he's responsible for her husband's death or for keeping her porcelain figurines wherever she damn well pleases. And Phil is really not that bad. He's strict and a stickler for rules, but then he has to be with random children coming in and out of his house, especially if they behave like Kyle, hellbent on doing everything she's not supposed to. While he's not very warm with Andy, he's not particularly malicious either, and I think he genuinely cares about his wife. There's a lot of stuff projected onto him that isn't actually in the film. If he has a flaw, it's not putting his foot down and trusting his instincts that Andy is trouble and not safe to have in the house. Right on both accounts, by the way, even if it's not his fault. My vote would go to Grace, who gives out sensitive information nilly-willy. If you wonder where the toy company got all their intel from, here's your answer. And she seems to throw her children at everyone who passes by with no regard as whether they're a good fit or not. She's indirectly responsible for many deaths.
Wow. Throw the civil service worker under the bus, why don't you? Also, I have to say, like, he started to kind of touch on it with his discussion of, like, Phil's only flaw. But the thing is, he said Phil has to deal with these kids in his own house. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Period. Go on.
Unfairness Entertainment. Comparing Phil to Joanne, are you insane?
I love that.
I don't know which one of us that is pointed towards, but...
Probably me.
Blueberry says, I mean, look at him. Is that a quote from the movie?
I think it...
I mean, look... if Chucky was... I mean, look at him.
Go on.
Jayton Pasco. Having not watched this movie in many, many years, I can barely remember Phil, but I know I don't like him. Itsy Benny, Phil, and then Kira Wood, Phil. He's the worst. Joanne was meh. So,
okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a Magic Eye poster. You see it or you don't,
Yeah.
you know? So, who do you pick, Zach?
For my cherry picker for Finner, I mean, it's probably the boring choice, but I'm going to go with our wonderful leading man,
Okay.
Billy Halleck. I had to look it up because I forgot his last name. Billy Halleck.
Okay. Yeah, he's despicable, but I'd argue equally and possibly more so despicable is Richie, because this man has no stake in this game other than, like, his pride and I guess his assumed connection to Bill for getting him off. But I mean, he got him off in an unscrupulous way, and he's an unscrupulous lawyer, we know. And so I don't know, for him to not even, you can't even call it double down, because Bill has threatened and ran, basically. Like, and then he hires Richie, and Richie comes in and just turns, we called it turning the heat up, but I mean, just like basically lights the whole situation. Like if it were a powder keg and there was a wick, he's the one there just like with the flint just going, yeah, and escalates in ways that are not necessary, and he doesn't suffer any consequence, does he? Richie just kind of...
No, he just disappears after.
He just walks away. He's not part of the movie anymore after after
leaving the jar of acid on Gina's forehead.
On the top of Gina's forehead.
Look, she wasn't innocent
really
in all this
carefully.
either.
No, she wasn't innocent, but I mean, she had a vendetta, and so did Bill. I don't see Richie's vendetta. Again, Richie's one of those people who I think needs half an excuse to be a destructive person because he enjoys it. If he were to go toe-to-toe with Sydney in a Scream movie, she'd say, Richie, do you know why you kill people? Because you choose to. There is no reason why. You know, he's just like,
or maybe she would say what she said to Scream's Richie was, oh, go fuck yourself.
Why don't you take some fucking responsibility?
Fuck you! Fuck you!
Yeah, exactly. And then charge at each other. I want that. I want to see Sydney destroy Richie. Now I want it. I want that movie.
Great.
This is a shared universe.
Maybe that'll be a future Ghostface killer will be Joe Mantegna. Sydney goes up against the mafia.
Fat Richie. Yeah. All right, there you go.
All right, so those are your nominations. You can vote for either Billy, Halleck, or Rich. They're both names of Ghostface killers. Or Richie. What is Richie's last name?
I wrote it down somewhere in here. Janelli. Yeah.
And that will be open for voting on Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. I would also like to welcome a slew of new Patreon supporters. So say hello to Jared Patrick, Jalen, Thierry C. Leduc, Hernan Martinez, Edgerin Brown, Nick B, Double Dash. Although when I say double dash, it's literally just 2 lines. So I'm gonna call him or her a double dash. Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer Rando, Malik Parker, Ryan Dempsey, Megan Olson, and Ryan Reagan.
Welcome!
Hello. Thank you for coming on board.
The Pick-Up Parade.
Aboard. If you would like to support on Instagram, on Patreon as well, you can find my Patreon account, Zack Cherry. All tiers get you early access to the Cherry Picker, so you get to watch or listen to these episodes several days beforehand. Also, if you are subscribed to the Freddy Krueger tier, you get the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is our monthly bonus episode. And this month is a really fun episode. We are premiering Scream Survivor. We literally took 18 random characters picked at random from the Scream franchise and threw them on an island to compete against each other, where one will be crowned, or has been crowned, the sole survivor. You'll have to watch to find out. You'll have to subscribe and come on board so you can see who it was that won. But
it was fun, and it was involved.
It was very involved. Like, if you're a fan of Survivor, it was very Survivor. Like, we used a template that matched how the actual show goes. There were idols and advantages thrown in. There were alliances, betrayals. It was really great. So if you want to see your favorite or least favorite characters from the Scream franchise duke it out for $1 million in the title of Soul Survivor, definitely check that out. There's always lots of bonus things on my Patreon that you can enjoy. But also, just if you are new to the podcast and you just want to get more familiarized with us, you can find us on YouTube under the Cherry Picker. So this is available to watch. And if you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to us. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below. Social media, our Instagram is @thecherrypickerpod. But if you want to just find one of us separately, Edward, where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube @EdwardIsTruth. And I think I'm EdwardIsTruth, one word, on all my platforms, including Letterboxd, which I'm I think I'm going to try again. I did one review and it wore me out, and now I'm trying to be a little bit more brief so I can get more on there. So follow me on Letterboxd too if you want.
Oh, I think I'm this handle on all of my platforms. I've only been reciting this lie. I
feel like it's my default. I can't imagine putting myself as anything else at this point, and I did get the account really recently. How about you, Zack?
Yeah, and you can find me on Instagram at Retro Bitch Face. Also got a YouTube channel, Zack Cherry. That's ZACKCHERRY. I've got a Letterboxd somewhere, and I got a Twitter, Zack Cherry 8. But I'm not involved on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is just for my own entertainment. But what have we got going on next week for the regular Cherry Picker episode?
Oh, we didn't go over this. So is it the one?
Oh my gosh.
Where? Can you give me a descriptor, like something? Like which one is it? Is it what is it? Who's in it? Why is it?
It's a James Wan
what happens?
Film.
James Wan. We're not doing. Oh, I know which one. Is it the recent James Wan film?
It's pretty recent. Yeah, 2021.
That's not Aquaman.
It's not Aquaman.
It's not Aquaman. Yeah. It's the one. Oh wait, but what's that word? It begins with an M.
Yes.
Malignant. It's Malignant.
Right.
I
ding,
win.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. What do I get? What do I win?
Me telling you to pay attention to our Instagram account where these things are promoted heavily.
I do, but you know, I don't. I need to make a note of it. Is the thing, because I don't. If I don't write these things down, then I can't hold on to them.
It's true.
Memory is gone.
Is it? I thought you were gonna say it was Virgo.
No, it's just old. It's or maybe I as far as I know, I never got COVID, but maybe I just got it an asymptomatic case at some point, and maybe I just have brain fog. I don't know. You're
one of the lucky ones. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching, for listening, and we will be right back.